What follows is a reading of Hornets, a video game by Kitty Horror Show. Content warning: violence, murder, gore, body horror, and wasps. It's your fault the world is ending.
How so?
The city center. A tangle of squat square buildings with no doors, compressed, their skin knitted together by years and poor planning. The roads are black cobble, black like the sky, so that it looks like the city hangs in empty space. The air quivers and buzzes and shakes. The horizon glows red. The city's heart is quiet, withered, still.
Enter a building.
You pick a door and enter. No one to stop you. You're the only one in the city who isn't hemorrhaging.
Hemorrhaging.
A villa. Fire rages within, dances celebrantly atop its roof. Its doors have been boarded up from the outside.
Wander the streets.
You walk. The entire city is baying, and it has 1,000 throats.
Throats.
You allow yourself to become lost in the alleyways and cramped footpaths between the city's tiers. The droning of the Hornets' wings is incessant, and it bounces and amplifies off of the stone, rushing out to fill the alleys like water being channeled. It follows you everywhere.
Market.
The city's festival square, when not used for praising the gods, becomes crowded over with tents and stalls. Dozens of bodies, most of them punctured by stingers or eviscerated by chitinous jaws, are strewn across the square. Nearly every stall a splintered ruin. Hornets circle and hover overhead, or cling motionlessly to the nearby city walls. They ignore you.
Stalls.
You notice that one of the nearby stalls, which is still intact, once belonged to a brushmaker. You step toward the stall and survey the fruits of the dead woman's labor. Glyph painting brushes fanned out across the stone, each of them exquisitely beautiful. You kneel and pick one up, placing it in your satchel.
Gardens.
Curled up in the shadows of buildings and away from the fires and lights of the city's center, mosses climb walls and fill corners. Vines drape themselves across forgotten statues. Fleshy black willows with violet leaves grope yearningly for the ground and the sky. Doorways are grown over. Footpaths are lost. 2 hornets are mating in a clearing, backsides connected, bodies writhing and contorting in coital stupor, chitin slick with blood. They ignore you.
Alcove.
You used to come here sometimes. One of those kinds of anomalies that simply occur in cities that grow naturally. Separated from the garden by a lockless iron gate, a small space walled in by conjoined buildings, a single bench beside a small wishing well. From here, in the small square view of the sky, there are no stars, only wings.
Wishing well.
Something is shining beneath the water. You reach out to take it. It is a tiny, polished hematite statuette of a creature called a dolphin. You would imagine them very differently. You take the statuette.
Take. Plaza.
A wide stone terrace, 100,000 squares and triangles of colored glass set into the streets, which shone like a field of opalescent diamonds on festival nights when the moons were full and close. Perforated bodies litter the area. The air is rank with blood. Several hornets on the other side of the plaza are ravaging some of the corpses, disemboweling them with their mandibles, puncturing their inert forms with their stingers again and again, reveling. They ignore you.
Colored glass.
The glass would glow and sing depending on the moons, and on the things it felt through the feet of dancers and what was poured on it. You once poured the last of your wine onto a pattern shaped like a moth, and it bathed you in sapphire light, and the song it sang pulled the breath from your lungs like an undertow. Right now, with only blood to drink, the glass is wailing.
Temple district.
Houses turn to temples, and the streets are punctuated with shrines, statues, murals. One road leads up the side of a hill, curling serpentine along the slope, to where a great circle of fluted columns holds up the domed roof of the oracle. Nearby, a hornet stands motionless atop the roofs of two conjoined temples, its black head pointed towards you, the orange of the horizon reflected in its carapace.
Oracle.
You ascend the smooth steps that lead up the hill from the temple district and approach the oracle, passing through one of the grand arches that make up its walls. One of the elder invokers is pacing the grand circular chamber, keeping guttering candles lit and crying to himself. Your footsteps signal your entrance. He turns to face you. He goes pale first, then red. He pitches his candle at you, and it snaps against the marble floor.
Snaps.
"You have murdered us all," he says. "We had such hopes for you. The ink so loved you, you could nearly hear it singing. But you have murdered us. For what? For what?"
For what? Because I could.
The elder spits at you. The air stirs suddenly, guttering the candles. The sound of droning approaches fast. The elder casts his eyes about, then begins to run. The oracle shakes as a hornet touches down just outside. The elder screams. The hornet forces its head in through an archway. In an instant, without sound, the hornet's mandibles are around the elder's middle. Without sound, the hornet's mandibles slice the elder in half. The body topples, blood and viscera fanning out across the candle-lit marble. The hornet lifts off again, departs. The wide circular chamber is quiet, the orange light of old candles making the columns and archways shake like a mirage. You are surrounded by the judgmental statues of gods and goddesses. On her smooth, naked belly, the statue of hate still wears the glyph you drew upon her. The corpse of an elder invoker is here, divided in half at the trunk.
Glyph.
Words abstracted into symbols, woven together, interlocked, activated. Death, swarm, end, wings, night. You were among the most gifted.
Gifted.
Even as the ink left your brush, you felt your anger draining, until when the final line was laid against her stone skin, you stood and gawped at what you had done, the cause of your fury forgotten, limbs leaden with shock at your own actions and the knowledge of catastrophic, irreparable change.
change.
There were maybe 3 seconds where you might have undone it, might have stopped everything, but they had not taught you how to erase. There is no such thing as impermanent ink.
Impermanent ink. Examine a statue.
Augur, father of the tall stone, god of buildings, tools, cities, and invention. Arya, mother of the endless song, goddess of music, beauty, dreams, and madness. Ink, mother of the page, goddess of language, art, and secrets. Hate, mother of the hive, goddess of fury, plague, wings, death, and stinging insects. Nail, mother of the sea of knives, goddess of chains, agony, blood, metal, and rust. Pyre, father of the sun, god of fire, deserts, salt, and desiccation. Signal, father of the black towers, god of noise, interruption, nightmares, and telepathy.
Apothecary.
Tables, bottles, mortars, pestles. A wasp ravages the tissue of a tree, which swells with toxins, which the apothecaries harvest, lance, drain, and use for the mixing of ink. The blood of the city, it had been called by people who now would gasp at their own pre-sagacity. A robed figure is slouched at a writing desk, an empty bottle in their hand, black fluid running down in rivulets from the corner of their slack mouth.
Ink.
There is a small glass vial with sharp edges on one of the tables. You pick it up. It feels warm and vibrant, singing to your skin. The wasp that gave the ink had made the gall that made this ink, shared your resonance. This ink was meant for you. You slip the vial into your satchel.
Library.
The sconces outside the entrance arch have toppled. High above, the great domed glass roof of the Athenaeum has been punctured. The hornets swarm in and out, shredding the flesh of history and science to build new nests. One of them clings to the facade, motionless, head pointed towards the ground, its giant eye watching you ambivalently. You enter. First floor. The marble walls and vastness of the library's first floor amplify the droning wing noises of the great hornets that writhe across the high ceiling. Many shelves and volumes have been destroyed. The floor is clean of bodies. It was to their homes or the battlements that everyone ran, not the comfort of old knowledge. Suddenly, it had all become useless. Second floor. Their wings stir the air, cool gusts that smell of ozone and brush the hair out of your eyes. The dome above you, which depicted the deaths of gods and which you had grown so used to staring at for long hours, is filling slowly with porous nests. Shredded pages and filmy wing scales drift down to coat the floor. Your feet feel sticky. Toppled shelves make movement impossible.
Scriptorium.
the center of your work, of your art, where your hands were trained to brush ink across page while the vitae of creation ran like light through your fingertips, taught to make your ink drink you and harden your will. You were taught too much. There are shelves of books filled with the knowledge of old masters. There's also a locked case full of papyri where the aberrants are locked away from the unready.
Books.
Written in the hieroglyphs which so entranced you in your adolescence. You used to stare at them for hours until their lines and curves became meaningless with semantic satiation, obsessing over the subtle poetry and quivering, hidden energy in the shapes themselves. You knew how readily they could tear everything apart, and it made your heart flutter, and your palms ache.
But you were not always like this. Locked case.
The elder invokers held their secrets tight, believing that the stability of the city relied on their reluctance to spread knowledge. Their reluctance relied on weak locks. You snapped the hinge off the case and retrieved the papyrus of the one aberrant glyph you had not managed to see. Fire. The glyph teaches itself to you, practically slides into you, worming under and past your eyes and into your understanding. You now possess all of the knowledge that the elder invokers believed was required before the world could end.
Gates.
The great black gates of the city had always kept it safe from those who coveted its arts and music. They did nothing at all against the translucent wings of hate's titanic harbingers, only prevented the citizenry from dying outside in the grassy fields.
Gatehouse.
The room is narrow, lit by a single candle that sputters and coughs greasy smoke. A gate guard is here, slouched in a chair, trying to keep his entrails from leaving his body through a hole in his stomach. Blood laps down his front from his mouth. His eyes are glassy and pleading. He looks to you and coughs, groans, gurgles. On the wall is the winch that opens the city's front gate.
Pleading.
A small act of mercy, hitherto the only kind of which you are capable. You lean forward, retrieving your brush and ink from your satchel, and mark the guard's forehead with the death glyph, channeling your will through the shaft of your brush. The guard's eyes widen and he begins to choke. The ink settles into his skin. Soon his body is lax and lifeless.
Winch.
You crank the winch. Outside the gatehouse, you can hear the low groaning of the city's gates, opening to the dark fields outside.
Fields.
The dark sea of grass shivers and roils. The bloody orange horizon is dotted with the iron skeletons of distant towers. Everywhere, on the horizon and in the sky and above the city and on the walls, the hornets are buzzing, hovering, soaring, perching, nesting. They ignore you. Leading away from the city, further out into the vast darkness of the fields and to the hills beyond, hornets are grazing here. They ignore you.
Hills.
rising up from the fields like bloated sores on the skin of the world, peaked with scabrous tufts of jagged, leafless forests. Hornets are mating here. Hornets are laughing here. They ignore you.
Woods.
Branches snap like rotten teeth. The trees are tall and fleshless. No leaves, no moisture, no protection from the stars. Hills behind, a clearing filled with metal spires ahead. Hornets celebrating indulgently the brutal slaughter of your species here. They ignore you.
Towers.
The towers of signal, where he struck the earth and filled the air with soundless noise, and where ink made love to him and gave birth to the language. Each one is as wide as the oracle at its base, and each stretches so high that one must look straight up to see the top. Each is covered in tumescent, papery growths, nests, virulent and unnatural, all of them bubbling with massive newborn hornets. They ignore you. All of the others are dead. Here and in the city, you are alone with the hornets. Here, among the feet of the towers, you are alone with the hive. You have the components to burn it.
Burn it.
You retrieve the vial of ink and brush from your satchel. You open the vial, dip your brush. You reach forward and shut your eyes. The glyph of fire rushes up and etches itself against the backs of your eyelids. Your fingers begin to feel hot. The tip of your brush makes contact with the nearest tower.
Nothing happens.
Above, the hornets are laughing. Above, the hornets are breeding. Above, the hornets are multiplying. Above, hate is watching her children spread out across the surface of the earth like an infection, and watching one tiny creature with a brush attempting to use the god's own gifts against her. But of course, the gods cannot be killed by their own weapons, and so she laughs.